Hi, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. You have Alyssa Corum and Justin Nielsen here to break down the market action led by the Nasdaq. So a lot of strength in technology today, Justin, including the chip sector and a couple of other names of interest.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and start with the chip sector today and look at applied materials because, as you mentioned, a lot of interest in technology today and chips in particular. But we'll also take a look at Commvault Systems. That was another one in the technology sector that was looking very strong as a breakout today. But let's not forget that there were also financials that were looking good today, some of our old guard, including Morgan Stanley. So we'll take a look at that one and finish it up with that.
That's right. But first, a look at the major indexes, kicking things off with the Nasdaq here, which gained 1.4% for the day, leading the charge. The S&P 500 up 1%, the Dow up 0.5%, and the Russell 2000 small caps up about 0.6%. So tech really leading the charge here, and the Nasdaq finally back above the 50-day line. We've been watching very closely for this to happen. But the question now, Justin, seems to be, is this rally real? Is it going to stick this time?
Right. And that's something that you never know until, after the fact. So what you have to do is you just have to kind of go with the information that you have. And right now, the fact is we are clearing our moving averages, whether it's the 50, the 21-day, a lot of those, we're starting to get back above those, and that is a positive thing. Now, you look back in September for the Nasdaq's action, and we had that correction in September, and look, we got to new highs, and then we went back. It was kind of doodling around for a little while, but once it really kind of got its legs, that was a rally you didn't want to miss. So in the same case here, if this is going to be a rally that works, you don't want to be too late to it. And you don't want to wait until it's like, oh, once it's obvious, because then a lot of times you're going to be out of position. So it's a good idea to make sure that your watch lists are all fresh. And it doesn't mean you have to go plunging back in to technology right now, but you should have your watch list ready. And it does seem like there's more setups out there and a lot more technology that's working. So it's definitely an area to be very mindful of. Now, you also have the Nasdaq 100 that's been looking even stronger. Right. And this is something that we saw at the end of March, where the Nasdaq 100 was, really leading the Nasdaq composite. And what was going on, a lot of these big cap names, you have your Googles, your Amazons, your Apples, those that are approaching your 2 trillion mark in market cap, those were really leading. And we were mentioning how the advanced decline line on the Nasdaq composite had been going down. There wasn't much breadth. So the question here is, this time, is it just going to be a very narrow leadership here again, or is this going to be something that broadens out a little bit more? And if that's the case, that makes it a lot easier to play and participate in a rally.
Most definitely, but potentially a turning point here for technology. Let's also check in on the S&P 500, which had a strong gain today of 1%. And after a very recent test, the 50-day line is getting back towards those prior highs.
Yeah, and the S&P 500 never really had too much of a corrective phase. I mean, it's tested its 50-day moving average line. It's found support each time. And a lot of that is because, hey, while it does have that technology exposure, it also has a lot of these other things that have been working, whether it's energy, materials, industrials, exposure to a lot of those things that have been working very well. And they still did well today, but the technology was really where the action was. And so the S&P 500 was up nearly 1%, and it's almost at those highs. I think the level to look at right here is 4,200 for the S&P 500. If you're looking at SPY, that's right around 420. This is an area that we kind of hit before, and we broke into new high ground a little bit and then kind of came back in. So I'd like to see us clear that 420 level and hold it. And again, it's a matter of whether or not the NASDAQ composite, which has been lagging in its relative strength, if that starts coming on a little bit stronger, because that's where we tend to do best with our CanSlim style of investing with those growth names. And a lot of times that is more centered towards technology.
Well, if it's time to increase exposure to technology, maybe investors should be looking at applied materials. AMAT gaining 4.6% today, getting back above its 50-day line in a big way today after trying to really clear that level last week, also clearing a trend line, but seeing the strength in the semiconductor sector and the chip equipment makers in particular today is definitely encouraging to see.
Yeah, and you've had some of the leadership. I mean, we've been talking about ASML as one of the leaders. We've been talking about Lam Research, LRCX. So there's a lot of other names in here. So it's not like AMAT is this, lone wolf. There's a lot of strength in the chip sector. And in fact, this was our stock of the day today. So I highly recommend people take a look at Patrick Seitz' article on this. He's our technology guy, so he really has a good sense of this. The fact is, there's a lot of need for increased capacity. There's going to be a lot of CapEx spending, and AMAT really kind of came out with, projections. Normally, not something that they're able to project too far out, but given the amount of capacity that's required, they're able to kind of start saying, hey, look, we see a lot of runway forward here for growth. And so that's something that is really looking good for AMAT. And again, as you mentioned, we're back above the 50-day moving average line, crossing a downtrend. So this is kind of a nice area to be entering as a lower risk, because if it gets back below that 50-day moving average line, you're going to know pretty quickly, hey, this isn't working out like I expected. But on the other hand, if this gets back to new highs, you're going to have a nice cushion before this breaks out again.
Most definitely a compelling setup here for AMAT. And elsewhere, let's check in on CVLT, a name that we don't talk about too much, Justin, but is this breakout here showing signs of life in the software sector, which had just really led the charge last year, but has taken a lot of time off? Is something like this giving us a signal that this rotation back into tech could stick if we're seeing software names participate like this?
Well, it's definitely one I think that we need to be mindful of and watching. As you mentioned, look, computer software, the database group there, it's 100 out of 197. So that's not quite the strength we like to see. However, you look at Commvault, and this relative strength line is not that far off of new highs. Personally, I would have preferred the fact that this is getting to new highs. I would have liked to see that relative strength line get to new highs as well. But there was a lot of volume behind this move, and that's something that's been lacking in a lot of the breakouts that we've seen lately, a lot of the setups that we've been seeing. Sometimes, the low volume has kind of scared me off, but we definitely had very strong volume in the action today. And it was actually very strong volume on Friday as well. Not much price movement, by the time the close happened. But I really like the look of this, a very strong breakout, a lot of volume behind it. So this is one I'm going to be watching to see, hey, is this maybe some more activity going on in computer software? And specifically, when you're dealing with data, I mean, that's so important right now, and protecting the data, which is something that Commvault Systems is very involved with.
Most definitely. And last but not least, we have to check in on Morgan Stanley, because even though technology was squarely in focus today, we saw Morgan Stanley perform nicely, up 1.5%. And the weekly chart shows a really great picture here because it's clearing a 3 weeks tight, which is something that we really like to see. So it wasn't just technology that was looking appealing today.
Right. And, in the financials, looking at a lot of the regional banks, which have been an area of strength, those were a little bit weaker today. But the big money center banks, think Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, those were still holding pretty strong. And as you mentioned, I really like that 3 weeks tight pattern that happened right after the breakout. A lot of times when you have that kind of, tightening up there, it's good action. In fact, our founder Bill O'Neill used to call that stealth accumulation. And so when you see that tight action, that's usually a good thing. There wasn't much volume behind the move today, but I do like the action that I'm seeing here. The relative strength line on this one, again, is something that's been very strong. And if you need, it's not necessary for you to go all into tech. It's some diversification is always good. So, this might be an area where you have some diversification outside of tech.
So any recent breakouts or setups that were actionable today, if we see those start failing later in the week, do you think that might signal underneath the surface that there's still some things that need to be worked out before
Absolutely.
it's just, we're charging ahead.
Right. And that's why we don't plunge. You kind of let the market pull you in. You put some money out there, and the best way for you to know if you should put more money out there is that your previous decisions are working. As they start continuing to work, then you put more money out. You dole more money out. You let the market pull you in. You don't want this to be a case of where you just put everything in and hope for the best. Because as you mentioned, we've had a lot of breakout failures. We've had a lot of even 2 days of strength, and then it just goes right back below the 50-day moving average line. So the good news is we're going to know pretty quickly if we're in a similar situation as that. But if we do hold above these lines, and again, it's not that it's going to go straight up from here. We have to manage our expectations. But if we do hold, and if you continue making progress in your portfolio, that's always a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a strong start to the week, so we will be watching very closely to see if this rally does indeed stick. Justin, thank you so much for your analysis. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more IBD Live. Make sure you check that out, investors.com/IBD Live, our daily morning live stream where we're going really in depth into all of our analysis in real time. So we hope you join us, investors.com/IBD Live. We'll see you there, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow after the close.